And you start to realize that there's something more than awareness. There's something beyond consciousness. There's something beyond presence. Now that something cannot be described, so it gets a little tough to talk about it. But I do a pretty good job, so I'm going to try. Now when you notice that you are, right now, when you notice that there is a sense of presence awareness, can you also notice that that itself is present? Try to follow me here. It's a little subtle. We're talking about the absolute after all. Presence awareness is itself present. In a sense, you could say, I am aware of presence awareness. Does that make sense? You can notice the sense of I am, no? You can notice even awareness, subjective as it is, pure subjectivity of awareness itself, seeing itself, awakeness itself, clarity itself, cognizance itself, the intangible itself. But you're still recognizing the intangible. You're able to notice that awareness is awareness. In other words, awareness is, in the very subtlest sense of the meaning, an object. The subject itself is actually an object. That's why you, as the infinite, can grow tired of identifying yourself with the object that is awareness, the manifestation that is awareness. Now often we don't really talk about this, or you don't hear spiritual teachers talk very much about, at least I haven't found. Many talk about awareness as an object. It's awareness as the subject, as the absolute. But what I've found is that awareness is not the absolute. Awareness is the first manifestation of the absolute. The absolute is absolute. The absolute is indescribable. The infinite is infinite. It cannot be defined by a quality limited and small as awareness. Awareness has a limitation. It has to be aware. Infinity is not limited to having to be aware. Ta-da! That's why, for those that are ready and ripe and all that nonsense, like when the apple is ripe, it will fall from the tree. Don't believe in that. But when you are, you will find that awareness, in a sense, drops away. It's like it itself becomes tiring because you're identified with it. It's not that awareness is bothersome in and of itself. It's just the association of yourself with awareness is what becomes tiresome. Your association with yourself as the I or the I am becomes tiresome. It's that link, that identification with, that becomes tiresome because it's not absolutely true. Now initially it's the biggest satisfaction you can find because it's so much truer, so much freer, so much more indescribable than any object you've previously identified with. But so at some point, when awareness has been sufficiently recognized and realized and grown familiar with, befriended, then you can notice how anything that you place a lot of attention on now becomes the object. Similarly, when you realize yourself as awareness and things sort of become ephemeral and empty and dreamlike and transparent, and you don't have as many clutches anymore, as many, I guess attachments you could call it. You don't have as many associations. You don't refer to things as objects as much anymore because you see that they're all appearances of the subject. So really the objects that you perceive are projections of the subject itself. But now that that is seen, now that you see through the illusion of objectivity and objects, what you then see is awareness or presence or the now. But since now all your attention is naturally absorbed in awareness or the now, I'm not saying that you have to recognize awareness all the time, but when you get to the stage where it's sort of naturally here, and you're sort of naturally noticing that you're aware, and no one can really take that away from you anymore, and no experience can really take that away from you anymore, you might get triggered, you might have challenging experiences, but you're always noticing that there is something aware of all that. There's something that is free from that. Even if you're suffering, there's something that's aware of it, something that's witnessing it. When that becomes more and more natural for you, then you can understand how now your attention, or awareness itself, is sort of self-absorbed. So now, what is the object of awareness's attention? Itself. So now, awareness is the object. And as soon as there is an object, there is Well, this is not necessarily true, but I was going to say, as soon as there is an object, then you identify with that object. So now that you are identifying with awareness itself, that can therefore grow tiresome because it's not the ultimate truth. It's still a focus that you have to, in a sense, maintain, even though it's self-maintaining. But it's still something that is in your consciousness. It's still something that is pulling your consciousness into an object-focused state, even though the object knows the subject. Okay, very technical. Does it make sense so far? So then, what is beyond consciousness? What are you truly? Well, you are all of it because it all comes from your desire to create. Your desire to manifest, your desire to know yourself, your desire to be the one knowing itself. And so, it's all good. It's all you. But, for the sake of reversed exploration, what are you ultimately speaking? Ultimately speaking, you are infinite, indescribable, nothing, beyond, free, not this, nor that, nor the experiencer of this or that, neither perception nor non-perception, ingraspable. Again, not this nor that, nor the experiencer of this or that. Now, many people get the principle of I'm not this nor that. Do you get that? I'm not this flower, beautiful as it is, even though I am it too, because it's created out of my energy. But again, for the sake of reversed investigation, I'm not the flower because I'm aware of the flower. I'm not my body because I'm the awareness of my body. I'm not my emotions because I'm the awareness of my emotions. So I'm not this nor that. Anything that can appear to my awareness, I am not. But awareness itself is not often understood to also not be you. You are also not awareness. Awareness is optional. Now there's a few ways to realize this experientially, even though it's beyond experiencing. One such way is to, for a moment, ignore everything. Everything that comes to mind, you ignore it. So an experience arises, a sensation arises. You ignore it. You look whatever the other way might be. Oh, something registers itself inside of my awareness. Immediately, don't even go into it. There's no worth, for the sake of this experiment, to go into anything. So you ignore whatever comes up. You ignore that. You ignore that. So you use experience as a trampoline into non-experience. Anytime you experience something, you register something. Every time consciousness collapses onto an experience of itself, you look the other way as far as you can, wherever that might be. This is metaphorical, it's energetical, but it works. An experience arises over here, and before you get engaged in it, say no, ignore it. Go completely the other way. And keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that. And even do it to the sense of being the recognizer of experiences. Now again, this is where it gets really subtle, and it might not be for everyone all the time, or right now, but try it out. So notice that there is a recognizer in you, as you. There's a recognizer of experiences. You are the recognizer of experiences. If you can notice the recognizer of experiences, you can also look the other way. Move away from the recognizer. Be without the recognizer for a few seconds. Be absolutely indescribable. Unaware of anything, really. Yet not unaware either, but you're not recognizing anything. It's as if the vast, intangible, indescribable ocean of awareness, which already is empty and subjective, now becomes even more empty because it's reflective of infinity, of its source, of the truly indescribable, the truly intangible, the truly unmanifest, the truly before time. Ignore experiences until you get to the sense of, hey, there's this recognizer that goes to experiences, and then onto itself as awareness, and then maybe a moment of non-awareness, and then a moment of awareness of something, and then a moment of awareness of itself. Notice that recognizer, notice the awareness itself, the presence itself, and jump beyond the presence. Move away from the presence. Ignore presence. Until you get this understanding or realization that you don't have to be aware of anything if you don't want to. you start to get in touch with infinity. It's fun. So, yeah. A similar exercise has you go beyond whatever you're experiencing over and over and over again. Call this the perpetual beyondness loop. Activate the perpetual beyondness loop. When I was just exploring this understanding, this realization for myself, I very quickly came up with this method to increase the understanding or realization of it rapidly. So what I would do is, as soon as I had already gotten a touch or a sense, a glimpse of the infinite gap, the indescribable source, the void, perhaps, however you want to call it. No words actually do it justice, because it's not this, not that, nor the experiencer of this, but words have to be used. So what I did is, whenever an experience would arise of experiencing, I would say to myself, so to speak, beyond this. I am beyond that, beyond that, beyond that. And when you activate this for, say, I don't know, depends on the person, but say an hour. Sounds a little long, but just give it a shot. And you go beyond this, beyond that, beyond this. Your awareness takes on the quality of total transparency at some point. It becomes easier and easier and easier. At first it might feel like practice, but after a while it's like awareness is emptying itself out from identity with objects, as well as identification with even itself as some kind of a ground of being. Now suddenly the ground of being is the groundlessness of non-being. So awareness becomes empty, reflective of the one, the infinite one, the indescribable one, by going beyond, 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 beyond. Don't give yourself a rest. Yeah, I can't do it. No, beyond that too. Yeah, but I don't want to. No, beyond that too. Oh, I'm tired. No, beyond that too. I have an appointment. No, beyond that too. Do that for an hour and see what happens. It becomes perpetual, at least for a period of time, because you've built that momentum. Doesn't mean it will last you forever, but the realization will last you forever. You will find that after an hour of doing this, there is a very natural, inescapable transparency to your awareness that is not reflective of source. Peaceful in the most exquisite way, because it's even absent of peace, which is bothersome in comparison. And then it becomes self-sustaining, at least for a period of time. Enough to where you can really start to drop into this realization, and the assumption of you being presence, or you being the great I am, or you being awareness, or you being anything, drops away, becomes emptied out. And so you will feel for the rest of that day, after practicing that for about an hour, you will find that very naturally so, nothing sticks anymore. Because you've activated the perpetual beyondness loop. Beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that. And you become finer and finer and finer and finer and finer in your awareness, and less and less and less and less and less and less identified with anything. Another method you could apply is ask yourself, what remains at the end of all universes? What remains after all experience is done? That's the right answer. Nothing. Which is the source of everything. The enabler of everything. The infinite one enables everything. It never becomes anything. It only enables everything. Does that make sense? It's like, sometimes I use the analogy of throwing a tennis ball to your dog. The dog kind of is the person that sees the tennis ball and chases it because it doesn't know any better. It's kind of stupid, but so sweet, innocent. But source is like you throwing the ball, right? It's like you tossing a creation into the field of life, and then the personas start running after it. So you're like source that throws the ball, but it's never attached to the ball. Now you cannot continue to be the enabler of experiences if you were to be dragged along with the ball. If you were actually attached to your creations, you would not be a very efficient creator, because you would become your creations and you'd be stuck in that moment. So you're like the releaser of creations. You're like the enabler. You enable these things. But you will always remain free from the things you enable, beyond the grasp of the creations that you toss into existence. That's one of the senses that comes with it. Another sense that comes with it is that nothing ever happened. Not really. Nothing ever happened. And it kind of takes all edges off of this experience. Nothing ever happened. Yay! So now I can have fun, because nothing ever happened anyway. Now, be careful not to lose your integrity and your morality, but you won't, because you're all good people. But you can have the realization that nothing ever happened. When you have the realization that nothing ever happened, because of this intangibility that's now present, this ingraspability, this transparency that's now your awareness, you have now become not just awareness, but transparent awareness. Awareness transparent to its source, its enabler. In that mode, in that state, which is not a state, it's already here. It's freer than you can think of. It feels from that point of view like nothing ever applied to itself. To you as the infinite creator, to you as the one, to you as source, nothing ever applies. You see, everything can happen to creation. But again, it happens to the ball, it happens to the playing field, it happens to whatever you're enabling. It doesn't actually happen to you. Nothing can happen to you because, quite frankly, you're nothing. So nothing can happen to nothing. It's very hard for something to happen to nothing. So nothing ever happened to nothing. Everything always happens to everything. Now the liberating quality of this is that you can start to see and experience directly that whatever it is you're experiencing applies to consciousness. All the suffering you've done, thank you very much, has only ever applied to consciousness itself. It has never applied to the Absolute. You see, the Absolute has never blinked at any moment in your life. And it will continue to never blink at anything you ever experience. Oh my God, this experience is so intense. Can't get out of it. That's great. It applies to consciousness, not to you. So no need to change your experience, because everything applies to consciousness. But you are, quote-unquote, aware of consciousness. And you can see that even consciousness does not touch you. You can be with or without, beyond or engaged in. Everything that has ever occurred has occurred inside of consciousness. So who does an experience belong to? Every experience you've ever had belongs to that which is aware of the experience. Let that do the suffering for you, or the joy, or the happiness, either way. But see that it applies to the consciousness that's generating these experiences. It doesn't apply to you as the infinite. That's why it's peaceful beyond peace. Because peace is basically found in the energetic experience of the substratum of consciousness itself. The energy, the presence energy that makes up everything. Or the sense simply of spacious awareness. That's where we find a sense of peace. But as soon as we lose the recognition, or we're not yet fully convinced that that's always already here, we lose the sense of peace. But then it's back again. Oh, and it feels so good. But not really, because we're holding on to it. We're identified with